Today, we're diving into one of the greatest scientific detective stories ever told. It's a mystery that took over 1,500 years to solve, and the solution completely redefined our place in the universe.
So here's the central mystery. Imagine you're watching a planet like Mars night after night. It's moving along just as you'd expect, and then it just stops and starts moving backward for a few weeks before turning around again. This strange celestial U-turn made absolutely no sense. What could possibly be going on up?
Well, this bizarre little dance is called retrograde motion. You know, the ancient Greeks actually named the planets wanderers because of this. They believed the heavens were supposed to be perfect and orderly. So this strange, wandering behavior was a huge cosmic problem that they were absolutely determined to figure out.
So how do you even start to solve a puzzle like that, especially when you don't have things like telescopes? Well, the Greeks had three main tools: philosophy, a deep-seated belief that the universe had to be perfect, and, of course, what they could see with their own two eyes.
Their starting point just felt obvious: an Earth-centered or geocentric model of the universe. I mean, it makes sense, right? We feel stationary, the sun and stars seem to move around us. The only problem? Simple, perfect circles around the Earth just couldn't explain that pesky backward motion. It was a major flaw in their otherwise beautiful system.
Now, when your observations don't quite fit your theory, you've really only got two choices. You can either throw out the theory, or you can make it more complicated. The Greeks chose complication, and that led to one of the most brilliant but ultimately wrong solutions in the history of science. The man who seemingly cracked the code was the astronomer Claudius Ptolemy, way back around 140 AD. He took that basic Earth-centered idea and built a system so clever it would pretty much dominate scientific thought for the next millennium and a half.
So Ptolemy didn't get rid of the idea of perfect circles. He actually doubled down on them. He came up with this incredible idea that planets weren't moving in just one big circle around the Earth. Oh no, they were moving in circles upon circles. It was this amazing, complex mathematical workaround. Here's how he pictured it. Imagine a planet is on a small Ferris wheel. That little Ferris wheel is called the epicycle. Now imagine that entire Ferris wheel is being carried along a giant circular track that goes all the way around the Earth. That giant track is the deferent. When you combine those two motions, you get this loopy, spiraling path that, from our perspective here on Earth, perfectly explained that backward motion. Now, this system was, well, it was incredibly complicated. To make all the predictions line up, Ptolemy's final model needed something like 80 different circles all working together. But here's the kicker. It worked. It predicted where the planets would be with surprising accuracy. So accurate, in fact, that this model became the undisputed truth for almost 1,500 years. Think about that.
For centuries, that was the universe. But after the Dark Ages in Europe, as knowledge from the ancient Greeks was being rediscovered, a new idea began to bubble up. And it was an idea that was about to shatter everything.
A man named Nicholas Copernicus, basically on his deathbed, published a book that suggested something totally unthinkable. He proposed that maybe, just maybe, the Earth wasn't the center of everything. Maybe the sun was. I mean, just look at the difference here. Copernicus's sun-centered or heliocentric model just swept away all of Ptolemy's 80-plus circles. It replaced all that complexity with one beautiful, simple idea. All the planets, including us, are just moving in simple circles around the sun. The beauty of this new model was its simplicity. Suddenly, retrograde motion wasn't some complex celestial loop-the-loop, it was just an illusion. It's like when you're on a highway in a fast car, and you pass a slower car. For just a moment, that slower car looks like it's moving backward, right? That's all retrograde motion was in this model, just Earth lapping the outer planets.
So if it was so much simpler, why didn't everybody just jump on board immediately? Well, because for all its elegance, the Copernican model wasn't actually any better at predicting where the planets would be. You had this simple, beautiful theory up against a complicated but proven system. And without any hard evidence, the new theory was just that, a theory. So for nearly a century, things were at a stalemate. And then came the moment the case was finally cracked. And it wasn't cracked with philosophy or math, but with a brand new piece of technology, and a guy who had the courage to point it at the heavens.
And that person was, of course, the Italian scientist Galileo Galilei. Now, he didn't invent the telescope, but he was the first one to really understand what it could do for astronomy, and what he found changed the world.
As soon as Galileo pointed his telescope at the sky, the old universe just started to fall apart. First, he saw moons orbiting Jupiter. That proved not everything circled the Earth. Then he saw spots on the sun, which shattered the whole idea of the perfect, unchanging heavens. Every new observation was just another nail in the coffin of Ptolemy's model.
But the real killer blow, the absolute smoking gun, was Venus. Galileo saw that Venus goes through a full cycle of phases, just like our moon does, and this is something that could only happen if Venus was going around the sun. It was totally mathematically impossible in the old Earth-centered system. This one observation was the proof. It showed the whole 1,500-year-old idea was wrong.
And what was his reward for this incredible, world-changing discovery? He was put on trial by the Inquisition. He was forced to publicly recant his own findings and was sentenced to house arrest for the rest of his life. The truth, it turned out, was considered far too dangerous.
But you can't keep an idea like this under house arrest forever. Galileo had provided the evidence, the seeds had been planted, but overturning centuries of belief was going to be a long, slow fight.
This timeline really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? Even with Galileo's proof in 1610, it took over 200 more years to get the final, irrefutable evidence. That final piece was something called stellar parallax, a tiny shift in the position of stars that you can only see if the Earth itself is actually moving. When that was finally measured in 1838, the debate was officially over.
When you look back at this whole 1,500-year saga, you realize something really important about how science works. You need two things for real revolution. You need a simple, powerful theory that explains the confusion, which is what Copernicus gave us, and you need cold, hard evidence that proves the old way of thinking is wrong, and that's what Galileo delivered.
It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What facts that seem completely obvious to us today might be totally wrong? This whole story is just a powerful reminder that the universe is packed with mysteries, and the incredible story of discovery is never, ever really over.